be educated in childlike simplicity. They should be trained to be content with the small, helpful duties and the pleasures and experiences natural to their years. Childhood answers to the blade in the parable, and the blade has a beauty peculiarly its own. Children should not be forced into a precocious maturity, but as long as possible should retain the freshness and grace of their early years. The more quiet and simple the life of the child, the more free from artificial excitement, and the more in harmony with nature, the more favorable it is to physical and mental vigor and to spiritual strength. Parents should, by their example, encourage the formation of habits of simplicity and draw their children away from an artificial to a natural life. Unaffected children are most attractive. Those children are most attractive who are natural and unaffected. It is not wise to give children special notice. Vanity should not be encouraged by praising their looks, their words, or their actions, nor should they be dressed in an expensive and showy manner. This encourages pride in them and awakes envy in the hearts of their companions. Teach the children that the true adorning is not outward. Whose adorning let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and of wearing of gold or of putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart in that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. 1 Peter 3 and 4. The secret of true charm. Girls should be taught that the true charm of womanliness is not alone in beauty of form or feature, nor in the possession of accomplishments, but in a meek and quiet spirit, in patience, generosity, kindness, and a willingness to do and suffer for others. They should be taught to work, to study, to some purpose, to live for some object, to trust in God and fear Him and respect their parents. Then as they advance in years, they will grow more pure-minded, self-reliant, and beloved. It will be impossible to degrade such a woman. She will escape the temptations and trials that have been the ruin of so many. Seeds of vanity. In many families, the seeds of vanity and selfishness are sown in the hearts of the children almost during babyhood. Their cunning little sayings and doings are commented upon and praised in their presence and repeated with exaggerations to others. The little ones take note of this and swell with self-importance. They presume to interrupt conversations and become forward and impudent. Flattery and indulgence foster their vanity and willfulness until the youngest, not infrequently, rules the whole family, father and mother included. The disposition formed by this sort of training cannot be laid aside as the child matures to riper judgment. It grows with his growth, and what might have appeared cunning in the baby becomes contemptible and wicked in the man or woman. They seek to rule over their associates, and if they refuse to yield to their wishes, they consider themselves aggrieved and insulted. This is because they have been indulged to their injury in youth, instead of being taught the self-denial necessary to bear the hardships and toils of life. Do not foster love of praise. Children need appreciation, sympathy, and encouragement, but care should be taken not to foster in them a love of praise. The parent or teacher who keeps in view the true ideal of character and the possibilities of achievement cannot cherish or encourage self-sufficiency. He will not encourage in the youth the desire or effort to display their ability or proficiency. He who looks higher than himself will be humble, yet he will possess a dignity that is not abashed or disconcerted by outward display or human greatness. Encourage simplicity in diet and dress. Parents have a sacred duty to perform in teaching their children to help bear the burdens of the home, to be content with plain and simple food and neat and inexpensive dress. Oh, that mothers and fathers would realize their responsibility and accountability before God. What a change would take place in society. Children would not be spoiled by being praised and petted or made vain by indulgence in dress. Teach simplicity and trust. We should teach our children lessons in simplicity and trust. We should teach them to love and fear and obey their Creator. In all the plans and purposes of life, His glory should be held paramount. His love should be the mainspring of every action. Christ, our example, Jesus, our Redeemer, walked the earth with the dignity of a king, yet He was meek and lowly of heart. He was a light and blessing in every home because He carried cheerfulness, hope, and courage with Him. Oh, that we could be satisfied with less heart longings, less strivings for things difficult to obtain, wherewith to beautify our homes, while that which God values above jewels, the meek and quiet spirit, is not cherished. The grace of simplicity, meekness, and true affection would make a paradise of the humblest home. It is better to endure cheerfully every inconvenience than to part with peace and contentment. Chapter 27, Cheerfulness and Thankfulness. Let a sweet influence pervade the home. Above all things else, let parents surround their children with an atmosphere of cheerfulness, courtesy, and love. A home where love dwells and where it is expressed in look, in words, in acts, is a place where angels delight to manifest their presence. Parents, let the sunshine of love, cheerfulness, and happy contentment enter your own hearts, and let its sweet, cheering influence pervade your home. Manifest a kindly, forbearing spirit and encourage the same in your children, cultivating all the graces that will brighten the home life. The atmosphere thus created will be to the children what air and sunshine are to the vegetable world, promoting health and vigor of mind and body. Let the countenance be cheerful. There is nothing gloomy in the religion of Jesus, while all lightness, trifling, and jesting, which the apostle says are not convenient, are to be studiously avoided. There is a sweet rest and peace in Jesus that would be expressed in the countenance. Christians will not be mournful, depressed, and despairing. They will be sober-minded, yet they will show to the world the cheerfulness which only grace can impart. Children are attracted by a cheerful, sunny demeanor. Show them kindness and courtesy, and they will manifest the same spirit toward you and toward one another. Educate the soul to cheerfulness, to thankfulness, and to the expression of gratitude to God for the great love wherewith He has loved us. Christian cheerfulness is the very beauty of holiness. Speak pleasant, cheery words. Pleasant, cheery words cost no more than unpleasant, moody words. Do you dislike to have harsh words spoken to you? Remember that when you speak such words, others feel the sharp sting. Parents, bring practical godliness into the home. Angels are not attracted to a home where discord reigns. Educate your children to speak words that will bring sunshine and joy. Encourage a happy frame of mind. If there is anyone who should be continually grateful, it is the Christian. If there is anyone who enjoys happiness even in this life, it is the faithful follower of Jesus Christ. It is the duty of God's children to be cheerful. They should encourage a happy frame of mind. God cannot be glorified by His children living continually under a cloud and casting a shadow wherever they go. The Christian should cast sunshine instead of a shadow. He will bear a cheerful countenance. Children hate the gloom of clouds and sadness. Their hearts respond to brightness, to cheerfulness, to love. Smile, parents, smile. Some parents and some teachers as well seem to forget that they themselves were once children. They are dignified, cold, and unsympathetic. Their faces habitually wear a solemn, reproving expression. Childish mirth or waywardness, the restless activity of the young life, finds no excuse in their eyes. Trifling misdemeanors are treated as grave sins. Such discipline is not Christ-like. Children thus trained fear their parents or teachers, but do not love them. They do not confide to them their childish experiences. Some of the most valuable qualities of mind and heart are chilled to death as a tender plant before the wintry blast. Smile, parents, smile, teachers. If your heart is sad, let not your face reveal the fact. Let the sunshine from a loving, grateful heart light up the countenance. Unbend from your iron dignity. Adapt yourselves to the children's needs and make them love you. You must win their heart. A fitting prayer. Make your work pleasant with songs of praise. If you would have a clean record in the books of heaven, never fret or scold. Let your daily prayer be, Lord, teach me to do my best. Teach me how to do better work. Give me energy and cheerfulness. Bring Christ into all that you do. Then your lives will be filled with brightness and thanksgiving. Let us do our best, moving forward cheerfully in the service of the Lord with our hearts filled with his joy. Teach children to be grateful. Thou shalt rejoice in every good thing that the Lord thy God hath given thee. Thanksgiving and praise should be expressed to God for temporal blessings and for whatever comforts he bestows upon us. God would have every family that he is preparing to inhabit the eternal mansions above give glory to him for the rich treasures of his grace. Were children in the home life educated and trained to be grateful to the giver of all good things, we would see an element of heavenly grace manifest in our families. Cheerfulness would be seen in the home life, and coming from such homes, the youth would bring a spirit of respect and reverence with them into the schoolroom and into the church. There would be an attendance in the sanctuary where God meets with his people, a reverence for all the ordinances of his worship, and grateful praise and thanksgiving would be offered for all the gifts of his providence. If the word of the Lord were now as strictly carried out as it was when enjoined upon ancient Israel, fathers and mothers would give to their children an example that would be of the highest value. Every temporal blessing would be received with gratitude, and every spiritual blessing become doubly precious because the perception of each member of the household had become sanctified by the word of truth. The Lord Jesus is very near to those who thus appreciate his gifts, tracing all their good things back to the benevolent, loving, caretaking God, and recognizing him as the great fountain of all comfort and consolation, the inexhaustible source of grace. Chapter 29, Honesty and Integrity. Honesty to be practiced and taught. It is essential that honesty be practiced in all the details of the mother's life, and it is important in the training of children to teach the young girls as well as boys never to prevaricate or to deceive in the least. The standard God requires. God wants men in his service under his banner to be strictly honest, unimpeachable in character, that their tongue shall not utter a semblance of untruth. The tongue must be true, the eyes must be true, the actions wholly and entirely such as God can commend. We are living in the sight of a holy God who solemnly declares, I know thy works. The divine eye is ever upon us. We cannot cover one act of unjust deal from God. The witness of God to our every action is a truth which but few realize. Those who realize their dependence upon God will feel that they must be honest with their fellow men, and above all, they must be honest with God, from whom come all the blessings of life. The evasion of the positive commands of God concerning tithes and offerings is registered in the books of heaven as robbery toward him. Honest weights and measures. An honest man, according to Christ's measurement, is one who will manifest unbending integrity. Deceitful weights and false balances with which many seek to advance their interests in the world are abominations in the sight of God. Firm integrity shines forth as gold amid the dross and rubbish of the world. Deceit, falsehood, and unfaithfulness may be glossed over and hidden from the eyes of man, but not from the eyes of God. The angels of God who watch the development of character and weigh moral worth record in the books of heaven these minor transactions which reveal character. Honest with time and money. Men are wanted whose sense of justice, even in the smallest matters, will not allow them to make an entry of their time that is not minute and correct. Men who will realize that they are handling means that belong to God, and who would not unjustly appropriate 1 cent to their own use. Men who will be just as faithful and exact careful and diligent in their labor in the absence of their employer as in his presence, proving by their faithfulness that they are not merely men-pleasers, servants, but are conscientious, faithful, true workmen, doing right, not for human praise, but because they love and choose the right from a high sense of their obligation to God. Just what he wants others to think he is. In every business transaction, a Christian will be just what he wants his brethren to think he is. His course of action is guided by underlying principles. He does not scheme, therefore he has nothing to conceal, nothing to gloss over. He may be criticized, he may be tested, but his unbending integrity will shine forth like pure gold. He is a blessing to all connected with him, for his word is trustworthy. He is a man who will not take advantage of his neighbor. He is a friend and benefactor to all, and his fellow men put confidence in his counsel. A truly honest man will never take advantage of weakness and incompetency in order to fill his own purse. Allow no deviation from rigid honesty. In every business transaction, be rigidly honest, however tempted, never deceive or prevaricate in the least matter. At times, a natural impulse may bring temptations to diverge from the straightforward path of honesty, but do not vary one hair's breadth. If in any matter you make a statement to what you will do and afterward find that you have favored others to your own loss, do not vary a hair's breadth from principle. Carry out your agreement. By seeking to change your plans, you would show that you could not be depended on. And should you draw back in little transactions, you would draw back in larger ones. Under such circumstances, some are tempted to deceive, saying, "I was not understood. My words have been taken to mean more than I intended." The fact is, they meant just what they said, but lost the good impulse and then wanted to draw back from their agreement, lest it prove a loss to them. The Lord requires us to do justice, to love mercy and truth and righteousness. Maintain strict principles. In all the details of life, the strictest principles of honesty are to be maintained. Deviation from perfect fairness in business deal may appear as a small thing in the estimation of some, but our Savior did not thus regard it. His words on this point are plain and explicit. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. A man who will overreach his neighbor on a small scale will overreach in a larger scale if the temptation is brought to bear upon him. A false representation in a small matter is as much dishonesty in the sight of God as falsity in a larger matter. Honesty should stamp every action of our lives. Heavenly angels examine the work that is put into our hands, and where there has been a departure from the principle of truth, wanting is written in the records. Section 8, the paramount task, character development. Chapter 31, importance of character. The only treasure taken from this world. A character formed according to the divine likeness is the only treasure that we can take from this world to the next. Those who are under the instruction of Christ in this world will take every divine attainment with them to the heavenly mansions. And in heaven we are continually to improve. How important then is the development of character in this life? True character, a quality of the soul. Mental ability and genius are not character, for these are often possessed by those who have the very opposite of a good character. Reputation is not character. True character is a quality of the soul revealing itself in the conduct. A good character is a capital of more value than gold or silver. It is unaffected by panics or failures, and in that day when earthly possessions shall be swept away, it will bring rich returns. Integrity, firmness, and perseverance are qualities that all should seek earnestly to cultivate, for they clothe the possessor with a power which is irresistible, a power which makes him strong to do good, strong to resist evil, strong to bear adversity. Its two essential elements. Strength of character consists of two things, power of will and power of self-control. Many youth mistake strong, uncontrolled passion for strength of character. But the truth is that he who is mastered by his passions is a weak man. The real greatness and nobility of the man is measured by his powers to subdue his feelings, not by the power of his feelings to subdue him. The strongest man is he who, while sensitive to abuse, will yet restrain passion and forgive his enemies. More necessary than outward show. If it were considered as important that the young possess a beautiful character and amiable disposition as it is that they imitate the fashions of the world in dress and deportment, we would see hundreds where there is one today coming upon the stage of active life prepared to exert an ennobling influence upon society. Its development is the work of a lifetime. The formation of character is the work of a lifetime, and it is for eternity. If all could realize this, if they would awake to the thoughts that we are individually deciding our own destiny for eternal life or eternal ruin, what a change would take place. How differently would this probationary time be occupied, and what different characters would fill our world. Development and growth. The germination of the seed represents the beginning of spiritual life, and the development of the plant is a figure of the development of character. There can be no life without growth. The plant must either grow or die. As its growth is silent and imperceptible but continuous, so is the growth of character. At every stage of development, our life may be perfect. Yet if God's purpose for us is fulfilled, there will be constant advancement. It is the harvest of life. The harvest of life is character, and it is this that determines destiny, both for this life and for the life to come. The harvest is reproduction of the seed sown. Every seed yields fruit after its kind. So it is with the traits of character. Selfishness, self-love, self-esteem, self-indulgence reproduce themselves, and the end is wretchedness and ruin. He that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. Galatians 6:8. Love, sympathy, and kindness yield fruitage of blessing, a harvest that is imperishable. The greatest evidence of Christianity. If Christian mothers will present to society children with integrity of character, with firm principles and sound morals, they will have performed the most important of all missionary labors. Their children, thoroughly educated to take their places in society, are the greatest evidence of Christianity that can be given to the world. The influence of one child properly trained. No higher work was ever committed to mortals than the shaping of character. Children are not only to be educated, but trained as well. And who can tell the future of a growing child or youth? Let the greatest care be bestowed upon the culture of your children. One child properly disciplined in the principles of truth, who has the love and fear of God woven through the character, will possess a power for good in the world that cannot be estimated. Chapter 33, Parental Responsibility and Character Formation, a divine commission to parents. God has given parents their work to form the characters of their children after the divine pattern. By His grace, they can accomplish the task, but it will require patient, painstaking effort, no less than firmness and decision, to guide the will and restrain the passions. A field left to itself produces only thorns and briars. He who would secure a harvest for usefulness or beauty must first prepare the soil and sow the seed, then dig about the young roots, removing the weeds and softening the earth, and the precious plants will flourish and richly repay his care and labor. Character building is the most important work ever entrusted to human beings, and never before was its diligent study so important as now. Never was any previous generation called to meet issues so momentous. Never before were young men and young women confronted by perils so great as confront them today. Here is your work, parents, to develop the characters of your children in harmony with the precepts of the Word of God. This work should come first, for eternal interests are here involved. The character building of your children is of more importance than the cultivation of your farms, more essential than the building of houses to live in, or of prosecuting any manner of business or trade. Home, the best place for character building. Neither the church school nor the college affords the opportunities for establishing a child's character building upon the right foundation than are afforded in the home. Crooked characters must be straightened. Those who do not make the crooked character straight in the life can have no part in the future immortal life. Oh, how important it is for the youth to keep straight. Parents act an important part in this matter. On them rests the sacred responsibility of training their children for God. To them has been given the work of helping their little ones form characters which will gain for them entrance into the courts above. Parents, do not blunder here. Parents, for Christ's sake, do not blunder in your most important work, that of molding the characters of your children for time and error on your part in neglect of faithful instruction or in the indulgence of that unwise affection which blinds your eyes to their defects and prevents you from giving them proper restraint will prove their ruin. Your course may give a wrong direction to all their future career. You determine for them what they will be and what they will do for Christ, for men, and for their own souls. Deal honestly and faithfully with your children. Work bravely and patiently. Fear no crosses. Spare no time or labor, burden or suffering. The future of your children will testify the character of your work. Fidelity to Christ on your part can be better expressed in the symmetrical character of your children than in any other way. They are Christ's property, bought with his own blood. If their influence is wholly on the side of Christ, they are his co-laborers, helping others to find the path of life. If you neglect your God-given work, your unwise course of discipline places them among the class who scatter from Christ and strengthen the kingdom of darkness. A clean house, but children untrained. I have seen a mother whose critical eye could discern anything imperfect in the matching of the woodwork of her house, and who was very particular to have her house cleaning thoroughly done at the precise time she had set, and would carry it through frequently at the expense of physical and spiritual health, while her children were left to run in the street and obtain a street education. These children were growing up coarse, selfish, rude, and disobedient. The mother, although she had hired help, was so much engaged in household cares that she could not afford time to properly train her children. She let them come up with deformity of character, undisciplined and untrained. We could but feel that the fine taste of the mother was not exercised in the right direction, or she would have seen the necessity of molding the minds and manners of her children and educating them to have symmetrical characters and lovely tempers. If the mother had let these things which she had allowed to claim her first attention come in secondarily, she would have regarded the physical, mental, and moral training of her children of almost infinite importance. Those who take upon themselves the responsibility of mothers should feel under the most solemn obligation to God and to their children to so educate them that they will have amiable and affectionate dispositions, and that they will be pure in morals, refined in tastes, and lovely in character. Only by God's Spirit shall we consider that we are capable of fashioning our lives and characters to enter into the portals of glory. We cannot do it. We are dependent every moment upon the Spirit of God operating upon us and upon our children. If parents would see a different state of things in their family, let them consecrate themselves wholly to God, and the Lord will devise ways and means whereby a transformation may take place in their households. God's part and yours. Christian parents, I entreat you to awake. If you neglect your duty and shirk your responsibility, expecting the Lord to do your work, you will be disappointed. When you have faithfully done all that you can do, bring your children to Jesus, and with earnest, persevering faith, make intercession for them. The Lord will be your helper. He will work with your efforts. In his strength you will gain the victory. When parents shall manifest such an interest for their children as God would have them, he will hear their prayers and work with their efforts, but God does not propose to do the work which he has left for parents to do. The Creator will help you. Mothers, remember that in your work, the Creator of the universe will give you help. In His strength and through His name, you can lead your children to be overcomers. Teach them to look to God for strength. Tell them that He hears their prayers. Teach them to overcome evil with good. Teach them to exert an influence that is elevating and ennobling. Lead them to unite with God, and then they will have strength to resist the strongest temptation. They will then receive the reward of the overcomer. Your compassionate Redeemer is watching you in love and sympathy, ready to hear your prayers and render you the assistance which you need in your life work. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, faith, and charity are the elements of the Christian character. These precious graces are the fruits of the Spirit. They are the Christian's crown and shield. A word of encouragement to those who have erred. Those who have been training their children in an improper way need not despair. Let them become converted to God and seek for the true spirit of obedience, and they will be enabled to make decided reforms. In conforming your own customs to the saving principles of God's holy law, you will have an influence upon your children. Some children will refuse to heed parental counsel. Parents may do everything in their power to give their children every privilege and instruction in order that they may give their hearts to God. Yet the children may refuse to walk in the light, and by their evil course cast unfavorable reflections upon their parents who love them and whose hearts yearn after their salvation. It is Satan who tempts children to follow in a course of sin and disobedience. If they refuse to walk in the light, if they refuse to submit their will and way to God, and persist in following a course of sin in their impenitence, the light and privileges that they have had will rise up in the judgment against them, because they did not walk in the light and knew not whither they went. Satan is leading them, and they become a subject of remark in the world. People will say, "Why, look at those children. Their parents are very religious, but you see they are worse than my children, and I do not profess to be a Christian." In this way, children who receive good instruction and yet do not heed it cast a reproach upon their parents, dishonoring them and putting them to shame before an ungodly world. They also bring a reproach upon the religion of Jesus Christ through their wicked course of action. Parents, this is your work. Parents, it is your work to develop in your children patience, constancy, and genuine love. In dealing aright with the children God has given you, you are helping them lay the foundation for pure, well-balanced characters. You are instilling into their minds principles which they will one day follow in their own families. The effect of your well-directed efforts will be seen as they conduct their households in the way of the Lord. Chapter 35, How Parents May Build Strong Characters. Devote best time and thought to it. The parents receive the child, a helpless burden in their arms. He knows nothing, and he is to be taught to love God, is to be brought up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. He is to be fashioned after the divine model. When parents see the importance of their work in training their children, when they see that it involves eternal interests, they will feel that they must devote their best time and thought to this work. Gain an understanding of principles involved. The lessons learned, the habits formed during the years of infancy and childhood have more to do with the formation of the character and the direction of the life than have all the instruction and training of after years. Parents need to consider this. They should understand the principles that underlie the care and training of children. They should be capable of rearing them in physical, mental, and moral health. Shun superficiality. We are living in an age when almost everything is superficial. There is but little stability and firmness of character because the training and education of children from their cradle is superficial. Their character is built upon sliding sand. Self-denial and self-control have not been molded into their characters. They have been petted and indulged until they are spoiled for practical life. The love of pleasure controls minds, and children are flattered and indulged to their ruin. Fortify children through prayer and faith. You have brought children into the world who have had no voice in regard to their existence. You have made yourselves responsible in a great measure for their future happiness, their eternal well-being. The burden is upon you, whether you are sensible of it or not, to train these children for God, to watch with jealous care the first approach of the wily foe, and be prepared to raise a standard against him. Build a fortification of prayer and faith about your children, and exercise diligent watching thereunto. You are not secure a moment against the attacks of Satan. You have no time to rest from watchful, earnest labor. You should not sleep a moment at your post. This is a most important warfare. Eternal consequences are involved. It is life or death with you and your family. Take a firm, decided stand. Parents generally put too much confidence in their children, for often when the parents are confiding in them, they are in concealed iniquity. Parents, watch your children with a jealous care. Exhort, reprove, counsel them when you rise up and when you sit down, when you go out and when you come in. Line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. Subdue your children when they are young. With many parents, this is sadly neglected. They do not take as firm and decided a stand as they should in regard to their children. Patiently sow precious seed. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Parents, your work is to win the confidence of your children, and in love, patiently sow the precious seed. Do your work with contentment, never complaining of the hardship, care, and toil. If by patient, kindly, Christ-like efforts you may present one soul perfect in Christ Jesus, your life will not have been in vain. Keep your own soul hopeful and patient. Let no discouragement be traced in your features or attitude. You have in your minds the making of a character through the help of God that may work in the Master's vineyard and win many souls to Jesus. Ever encourage your children to reach a high standard in all their habits and tendencies. Be patient with their imperfections as God is patient with you in your imperfections, bearing with you, watching over you, that you may bring forth fruit unto his glory. Encourage your children to strive to add to their attainments the virtues they lack. Teach submission to law. Fathers and mothers, be sensible. Teach your children that they must be submissive to law. It is not mercy or kindness to permit a child to have its own way, to submit to its rule, and to neglect to correct it on the ground that you love it too well to punish it. What kind of love is it that permits your child to develop traits of character that will make him and everyone else miserable? Away with such love. True love will look out for the present and eternal good of the soul. What right have parents to bring children into the world to neglect and to let them grow up without culture and Christian training? Parents should be responsible. Teach them control. Teach them that they are to be managed and not to manage. Coordinate the physical, mental, and spiritual. The physical, mental, and spiritual capabilities should be developed in order to form a properly balanced character. Children should be watched, guarded, and disciplined in order to successfully accomplish this. The physical constitution of Jesus, as well as his spiritual development, is brought before us in these words: the child grew and increased in stature. In childhood and youth, attention should be given to physical development. Parents should so train their children in good habits of eating and drinking, dressing and exercise, that a good foundation will be laid for sound health in after life. The physical organism should have special care that the powers of the body may not be dwarfed, but developed to their full extent. This places the children and youth in a favorable position, so that with proper religious training they may, like Christ, wax strong in spirit. Health is related to intellect and morals. In order to arouse the moral sensibilities of your children to the claims that God has upon them, you should imprint upon their minds and hearts how to obey the laws of God in their physical frames. For health has a great deal to do with their intellect and morals. If they have health and purity of heart, they are then better prepared to live and be a blessing to the world. To balance their minds in the right direction and at the right time is the most important work, for very much depends on the decision made at the critical moment. How important then that the minds of parents should be as free as possible from perplexing, wearing care in needless things, that they may think and act with calm consideration, wisdom, and love, making the physical and moral health of their children the first and highest consideration. Parents wonder that children are so much more difficult to control than they used to be, when in most cases their own criminal management has made them so. The quality of food they bring upon their tables and encourage their children to eat is constantly exciting their animal passions and weakening the moral and intellectual faculties. Pure food for the mind is essential. Educate the faculties and tastes of your dear ones. Seek to preoccupy their minds so that there shall be no place for low, debasing thoughts or indulgences. The grace of Christ is the only antidote or preventative of evil. You may choose, if you will, whether the minds of your children shall be occupied with pure, uncorrupted thoughts, or with the evils that are existing everywhere, pride and forgetfulness of their Redeemer. The mind, like the body, must have pure food in order to have health and strength. Give your children something to think of that is out of and above themselves. The mind that lives in a pure, holy atmosphere will not become trifling, frivolous, vain, and selfish. We are living in a time when everything that is false and superficial is exalted above the real, the natural, and the enduring. The mind must be kept free from everything that would lead it in a wrong direction. It should not be encumbered with trashy stories which do not add strength to the mental powers. The thoughts will be of the same character as the food we provide for the mind. A brilliant intellect is not sufficient. You may be pleased with the brilliant intellect of your child, but unless it is under the control of a sanctified heart, it will work at cross purposes with God. Nothing but a high sense of the claims of God upon us can give us the proper stability of character, penetration of mind, and depth of understanding essential to success, both in this world and in the world to come. Aim at high points in character development. If we teach our children to be industrious, half the danger is over, for idleness leads into all manner of temptation to sin. Let us educate our children to be simple in manner without being bold, to be benevolent and self-sacrificing without being extravagant, to be economical without becoming avaricious, and above all, let us teach them the claims which God has upon them, that it is their duty to carry religion into every department of life, that they should love God supremely and love their neighbor, not neglecting the little courtesies of life which are essential to happiness. Pray for heavenly wisdom. Parents should reflect and pray earnestly to God for wisdom and divine aid to properly train their children, that they may develop characters that God will approve. Their anxiety should not be how they can educate their children that they may be praised and honored of the world, but how they can educate them to form beautiful characters that God can approve. Much prayer and study are needed for heavenly wisdom to know how to deal with young minds, for very much is depending upon the direction parents give to the minds and wills of their children. Moral and spiritual guidance must be given. Parents need to be impressed with their obligation to give to the world children having well-developed character, children who will have moral power to resist temptation, and whose life will be an honor to God and a blessing to their fellow men. Those who enter upon active life with firm principles will be prepared to stand unsullied amid the moral pollutions of this corrupt age. Teach children to choose for themselves. Let the youth and the little children be taught to choose for themselves that royal robe woven in heaven's loom, the fine linen, clean and white, Revelation 19:8, which all the holy ones of earth will wear. This robe, Christ's own spotless character, is freely offered to every human being, but all who receive it will receive and wear it here. Let the children be taught that as they open their minds to pure loving thoughts and do loving and helpful deeds, they are clothing themselves with His beautiful garment of character. This apparel will make them beautiful and beloved here, and will hereafter be their title of admission to the palace of the king. Chapter 37, the power of habit. How habits are established. Any one act, either good or evil, does not form the character, but thoughts and feelings indulged prepare the way for acts and deeds of the same kind. It is by a repetition of acts that habits are established and character confirmed. The time to establish good habits. The character is formed to a great extent in early years. The habits then established have more influence than any natural endowment in making men either giants or dwarfs in intellect. But the very best talents may, through wrong habits, become warped and enfeebled. The earlier in life one contracts hurtful habits, the more firmly will they hold their victim in slavery, and the more certainly will they lower his standard of spirituality. On the other hand, if correct and virtuous habits are formed in youth, they will generally mark the course of the possessor through life. In most cases, it will be found that those who in later life reverence God and honor the right learned that lesson before there was time for the world to stamp its images of sin upon the soul. Those of mature age are generally as insensible to new impressions as is the hardened rock, but youth is impressible. Habits may be modified but seldom changed. What the child sees and hears is drawing deep lines upon the tender mind which no circumstances in life can entirely efface. The intellect is now taking shape and the affections receiving direction and strength. Repeated acts in a given course become habits. These may be modified by severe training in after life, but are seldom changed. Once formed, habits become more and more firmly impressed upon the character. The intellect is continually receiving its mold from opportunities and advantages, ill or well improved. Day by day we form characters which places students as well-disciplined soldiers under the banner of Prince Emmanuel, or rebels under the banner of the Prince of Darkness. Which shall it be? Persevering effort is necessary. What we venture to do once, we are more apt to do again. Habits of sobriety, of self-control, of economy, of close application, of sound, sensible conversation, of patience and true courtesy are not gained without diligent, close watching over self. It is much easier to become demoralized and depraved than to conquer defects, keeping self in control and cherishing true virtues. Persevering efforts will be required if the Christian graces are ever perfected in our lives. Corrupt children endanger others. God-fearing parents will deliberate and plan as to how to train their children to right habits. They will choose companions for their children rather than leave them in their inexperience to choose for themselves. If in their early childhood the children are not perseveringly and patiently trained in the right way, they will form wrong habits. These habits will develop in their future life and will corrupt others. Those whose minds have received a low cast, who have been cheapened by wrong home influences, by deceptive practices, carry their wrong habits with them through life. If they make a profession of religion, these habits will be revealed in their religious life. King Saul, a sad example. The history of Israel's first king presents a sad example of the power of early wrong habits. In his youth, Saul did not love and fear God, and that impetuous spirit, not early trained to submission, was ever ready to rebel against divine authority. Those who in their youth cherish a sacred regard for the will of God and who faithfully perform the duties of their position will be prepared for higher service in after life. But men cannot for years pervert the powers that God has given them, and then when they choose to change, find these powers fresh and free for an entirely opposite course. A child may receive sound religious instruction, but if parents, teachers, or guardians permit his character to be biased by a wrong habit, that habit, if not overcome, will become a predominant power and the child is lost. Small actions are important. Every course of action has a twofold character and importance. It is virtuous or vicious, right or wrong, according to the motive which prompts it. A wrong action by frequent repetition leaves a permanent impression upon the mind of the actor and also on the minds of those who are connected with him in any relation, either spiritual or temporal. The parents or teachers who give no attention to the small actions that are not right establish those habits in the youth. Parents should deal faithfully with the souls committed to their trust. They should not encourage in their children pride, extravagance, or love of show. They should not teach them or suffer them to learn little pranks which appear cunning in small children, but which they will have to unlearn and for which they must be corrected when they are older. Little pranks and errors may seem to be amusing when the child is a baby, and they may be permitted and encouraged, but as the child grows older, they become disgusting and offensive. Bad habits are more easily formed than good. All the learning they may acquire will never undo the evil resulting from lax discipline in childhood. One neglect often repeated forms habit. One wrong act prepares the way for another. Bad habits are more easily formed than good ones and are given up with more difficulty. Young children, if left to themselves, learn the bad more readily than the good. Bad habits agree best with the natural heart, and things which they see and hear in infancy and childhood are deeply imprinted upon their minds. Early habits decide future victory or defeat. We shall be individually for time and eternity what our habits make us. The lives of those who form right habits and are faithful in the performance of every duty will be as shining lights shedding bright beams upon the pathway of others. But if habits of unfaithfulness are indulged, if lax, indolent, neglectful habits are allowed to strengthen, a cloud darker than midnight will settle on the prospects in this life and forever bar the individual from the future life. In childhood and youth, the character is most impressible. The power of self-control should then be acquired. By the fireside and at the family board, influences are exerted whose results are as enduring as eternity. More than any natural endowment, the habits established in early years decide whether a man will be victorious or vanquished in the battle of life. Chapter 39, The Will, a Factor in Success. Every child should understand the power of the will. The will is the governing power in the nature of man, bringing all the other faculties under its sway. The will is not the taste or the inclination, but it is the deciding power which works in the children of men unto obedience to God or disobedience. Every child should understand the true force of the will. He should be led to see how great is the responsibility involved in this gift. The will is the power of decision or choice. Success comes when the will is yielded to God. Every human being possessed of reason has power to choose the right. In every experience of life, God's word to us is, "Choose you this day whom ye will serve." Joshua 24:15. Everyone may place his will on the side of the will of God, may choose to obey him, and by thus linking himself with divine agencies, he may stand where nothing can force him to do evil. In every youth, every child, lies the power, by the help of God, to form a character of integrity and to live a life of usefulness. The parent or teacher who by such instruction trains the child to self-control will be the most useful and permanently successful. To the superficial observer, his work may not appear to the best advantage. It may not be valued so highly as that of the one who holds the mind and will of the child under absolute authority, but after years will show the result of the better method of training. Do not weaken, but direct the child's will. Save all the strength of the will, for the human being needs it all, but give it proper direction. Treat it wisely and tenderly as a sacred treasure. Do not hammer it in pieces, but by precept and example, wisely fashion and mold it until the child comes to years of responsibility. Children should early be trained to submit their will and inclination to the will and authority of their parents. When parents teach their children this lesson, they are educating them to submit to God's will and obey His requirements, and fitting them to be members of Christ's family. to be guided, not crushed. To direct the child's development without hindering it by undue control should be the study of both parents and teacher. Too much management is as bad as too little. The effort to break the will of a child is a terrible mistake. Minds are constituted differently. While force may secure outward submission, the result with many children is a more determined rebellion of the heart. Even should the parent or teacher succeed in gaining the control he seeks, the outcome may be no less harmful to the child. Since the surrender of the will is so much more difficult for some pupils than for others, the teacher should make obedience to his requirements as easy as possible. The will should be guided and molded, but not ignored or crushed. Lead, never drive. Allow the children under your care to have an individuality as well as yourselves. Ever try to lead them, but never drive them. Exercise of will expands and strengthens mind. A child may be so trained as to have no will of his own. Even his individuality may be merged in the one who superintends his training. His will, to all intents and purposes, is subject to the will of the teacher. Children who are thus educated will ever be deficient in moral energy and individual responsibility. They have not been taught to move from reason and principle. Their wills have been controlled by another, and the mind has not been called out that it might expand and strengthen by exercise. They have not been directed and disciplined with respect to their peculiar constitutions and capabilities of mind to put forth their strongest powers when required. When there is a clash of wills, if the child has a stubborn will, the mother, if she understands her responsibility, will realize that this stubborn will is part of the inheritance she has given him. She will not look upon his will as something that must be broken. There are times when the determination of the mother meets the determination of the child, when the firm, matured will of the mother meets the unreasoning will of the child, and when either the mother rules because of her advantage of age and experience, or there is a ruling of the older will by the younger, undisciplined will of the child. At such times there is need of great wisdom, for by unwise management, by stern compulsion, the child may be spoiled for this life and the next. By a lack of wisdom, everything may be lost. This is a crisis that should seldom be permitted to come, for both mother and child will have a hard struggle. Great care should be shown to avoid such an issue. But once such an issue is entered into, the child must be led to yield to the superior wisdom of the parent. The mother is to keep her words under perfect control. There are to be no loud-voiced commands. Nothing is to be done that will develop a defiant spirit in the child. The mother must study how to deal with him in such a way that he will be drawn to Jesus. She must pray in faith that Satan shall not be victor over the child's will. The heavenly angels are watching the scene. The mother must realize that God is her helper, that love is her success, her power. If she is a wise Christian, she will not attempt to force the child into submission. She will pray, and as she prays, she will be conscious of a renewal of spiritual life within herself. And she will see that at the same time, the power that is working in her is working also in the child. And the child, in the place of being compelled, is led and grows gentler, and the battle is gained. Each kindly thought, each patient action, each word of wise restraint is like apples of gold and pictures of silver. The mother has gained a victory more precious than language can express. She has renewed light and increased experience. The true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world has subdued her will. There is peace after the storm, like the shining of the sun after rain. Parents should retain youthful feelings. Too few realize the importance of retaining so far as possible their own youthful feelings and not becoming harsh and unsympathizing in their nature. God would be pleased to have parents mingle the graceful simplicity of a child with the strength, wisdom, and maturity of manhood and womanhood. Some never had a genuine childhood. They never enjoyed the freedom, simplicity, and freshness of budding life. They were scolded and snubbed, reproved and beaten until the innocency and trustful frankness of the child was exchanged for fear, envy, jealousy, and deceitfulness. Such seldom have the characteristics that will make the childhood of their own dear ones happy. A great mistake. A great mistake is made when the lines of control are placed in the child's hands and he is allowed to bear sway and control in the home. This is giving undue direction to that wonderful thing, the willpower. But this has been done and will continue to be done because mothers and fathers are blind in their discernment and calculation. A mother who yielded to her crying child. Your child needs the hand of wisdom to guide him aright. He has been allowed to cry for what he wanted until he has formed the habit of doing this. He has been allowed to cry for his father again and again in his hearing. Others have been told how he cries for his father until he makes it a point of doing this. Had I your child, in 3 weeks he would be transformed. I would let him understand that my word was law, and kindly but firmly I would carry out my purposes. I would not submit my will to the child's will. You have a work to do here, and you have lost much by not taking hold of it before. Unhappy life of the spoiled child. Every child that is not carefully and prayerfully disciplined will be unhappy in this probationary time and will form such unlovely traits of character that the Lord cannot unite them with his family in heaven. There is a very great burden to be carried all through the life of a spoiled child. In trial, in disappointment, in temptation, he will follow his undisciplined, misdirected will. Children who are allowed to have their own way are not happy. The unsubdued heart has not within itself the elements of rest and contentment. The mind and heart must be disciplined and brought under proper restraint in order for the character to harmonize with the wise laws that govern our being. Restlessness and discontent are the fruits of indulgence and selfishness. The background of many trials, the sad trials which prove so dangerous to the prosperity of a church, and which cause the unbelieving to stumble and turn away with doubt and dissatisfaction, usually arise from an unsubdued and rebellious spirit, the offspring of parental indulgence in early youth. How many lives are wrecked, how many crimes are committed under the influence of a quick-rising passion that might have been checked in childhood, when the mind was impressible, when the heart was easily influenced for right, and was subject to a fond mother's will. Inefficient training of children lies at the foundation of a vast amount of moral wretchedness. Section 10. Discipline and its administration. Chapter 41. Objectives of discipline. Self-government, the paramount objective. The object of discipline is the training of the child for self-government. He should be taught self-reliance and self-control. Therefore, as soon as he is capable of understanding, his reason should be enlisted on the side of obedience. Let all dealing with him be such as to show obedience to be just and reasonable. Help him to see that all things are under law, and that disobedience leads in the end to disaster and suffering. When God says, "Thou shalt not," he in love warns us of the consequences of disobedience in order to save us from harm and loss. Enlisting the power of the will, the true object of reproof is gained only when the wrongdoer himself is led to see his fault and his will is enlisted for its correction. When this is accomplished, point him to the source of pardon and power. Those who train their pupils to feel that the power lies in themselves to become men and women of honor and usefulness will be the most permanently successful. Correct habits, inclinations, evil tendencies. It is the work of the parents to restrain and guide and control. They cannot commit a worse evil than to permit their children to gratify all their childish wishes and fancies and leave them to follow their own inclinations. They cannot do them a greater wrong than to leave upon their minds the impression that they are to live to please and amuse themselves, to choose their own ways and find their own pleasure in society. The youth need parents who will educate and discipline them, correct their wrong habits and inclinations, and prune away their evil tendencies. Break down Satan's stronghold. Mothers, the destiny of your children rests to a great extent in your hands. If you fail in duty, you may place them in Satan's ranks and make them his agents to ruin other souls. Or your faithful discipline and godly example may lead them to Christ, and they in turn will influence others, and thus many souls may be saved through your instrumentality. Let us look carefully and begin to catch up our dropped stitches. Let us break down the strongholds of the enemy. Let us mercifully correct our loved ones and keep them from the power of the enemy. Do not be discouraged. Teach respect to parental and divine authority. Children should be trained, educated, and disciplined until they become obedient to their parents, giving respect to their authority. In this way, respect for divine authority will be implanted in their hearts, and the family training will be like a preparatory training for the family in heaven. The training of childhood and youth should be of such a character that children will be prepared to take up their religious duties and thus become fitted to enter into the courts above. He who is the fountain of all knowledge has stated the condition of our fitness to enter the heaven of bliss in the words, "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city." Obedience to God's commandments is the price of heaven, and obedience to their parents in the Lord is the all-important lesson for children to learn. Obedience from principle, not compulsion. Tell your children exactly what you require of them. Then let them understand that your word is law and must be obeyed. Thus you are training them to respect the commandments of God, which plainly declare, "Thou shalt and thou shalt not." It is far better for your boy to obey from principle than from compulsion. A lesson in implicit confidence. Isaac is bound by the trembling, loving hands of his pitying father because God has said it. The son submits to the sacrifice because he believes in the integrity of his father. This act of faith in Abraham is recorded for our benefit. It teaches us the great lesson of confidence in the requirements of God, however close and cutting they may be. And it teaches children perfect submission to their parents and to God. By Abraham's obedience, we are taught that nothing is too precious for us to give to God. Youth will respond to trust. The youth must be impressed with the idea that they are trusted. They have a sense of honor and they want to be respected, and it is their right. If pupils receive the impression that they cannot go out or come in, sit at the table, or be anywhere, even in their rooms, except they are watched, a critical eye is upon them to criticize and report, it will have influence to demoralize, and pastime will have no pleasure in it. This knowledge of a continual oversight is more than a parental guardianship, and far worse. For wise parents can, through tact, often discern beneath the surface and see the working of the restless mind under the longings of youth or under the forces of temptations, and set their plans to work to counteract evils. But this constant watchfulness is not natural and produces evils that it is seeking to avoid. The healthfulness of youth requires exercise, cheerfulness, and a happy, pleasant atmosphere surrounding them for the development of physical health and symmetrical character. Self-government versus absolute authority. There are many families of children who appear to be well trained while under the training discipline, but when the system which has held them to set rules is broken up, they seem to be incapable of thinking, acting, or deciding for themselves. These children have been so long under iron rule, not allowed to think and act for themselves in those things in which it was highly proper that they should, that they have no confidence in themselves to move out upon their own judgment, having an opinion of their own. And when they go out from their parents to act for themselves, they are easily led by others' judgment in the wrong direction. They have not stability of character. They have not been thrown upon their own judgment as fast and as far as practicable, and therefore their minds have not been properly developed and strengthened. They have so long been absolutely controlled by their parents that they rely wholly upon them. Their parents are mind and judgment for them. On the other hand, the young should not be left to think and act independently of the judgment of their parents and teachers. Children should be taught to respect experienced judgment and to be guided by their parents and teachers. They should be so educated that their minds will be united with the minds of their parents and teachers, and so instructed that they can see the propriety of heeding their counsel. Then when they go forth from the guiding hand of their parents and teachers, their characters will not be like the reed trembling in the wind. The severe training of youth without properly directing them to think and act for themselves as their own capacity and turn of mind will allow, that by this means they may have growth of thought, feelings of self-respect, and confidence in their own ability to perform, will ever produce a class that are weak in mental and moral power. And when they stand in the world to act for themselves, they will reveal the fact that they were trained like the animals and not educated. These wills, instead of being guided, were forced into subjection by the harsh discipline of parents and teachers. Evil results when one mind dominates another. Those parents and teachers who boast of having complete control of the minds and wills of the children under their care would cease their boastings could they trace out the future lives of the children who are thus brought into subjection by force or through fear. These are almost wholly unprepared to share in the stern responsibilities of life. When these youth are no longer under their parents and teachers and are compelled to think and act for themselves, they are almost sure to take a wrong course and yield to the power of temptation. They do not make this life a success, and the same deficiencies are seen in their religious life. Could the instructors of children and youth have the future result of their mistaken discipline mapped out before them, they would change their plan of education. That class of teachers who are gratified that they have almost complete control of the wills of their scholars are not the most successful teachers, although the appearance for the time being may be flattering. God never designed that one human mind should be under the complete control of another, and those who make efforts to have the individuality of their pupils merged in themselves and to be mind, will, and conscience for them assume fearful responsibilities. These scholars may, upon certain occasions, appear like well-drilled soldiers, but when the restraint is removed, there will be seen a want of independent action from firm principle existing in them. Through skill and patient effort, it requires skill and patient effort to mold the young in the right manner. Especially do children who have come into the world burdened with a heritage of evil, the direct results of the sins of their parents, need the most careful culture to develop and strengthen their moral and intellectual faculties. And the responsibilities of the parents is heavy indeed. Evil tendencies are to be carefully restrained and tenderly rebuked. The mind is to be stimulated in favor of the right. The child should be encouraged in attempting to govern himself, and all this is to be done judiciously, or the purpose desired will be frustrated. Chapter 43, Discipline in the Home. Well-ordered, well-disciplined families. It is the duty of those who claim to be Christians to present to the world well-ordered, well-disciplined families that will show the power of true Christianity. It is no easy matter to train and educate children wisely. As parents try to keep judgment and the fear of the Lord before them, difficulties will arise. The children will reveal the perversity bound up in their hearts. They show love of folly, of independence, a hatred of restraint and discipline. They practice deception and utter falsehoods. Too many parents, instead of punishing the children for these faults, make themselves blind in order that they shall not see beneath the surface or discern the true meaning of these things. Therefore the children continue in their deceptive practices, forming characters that God cannot approve. The standard raised in God's Word is set aside by parents who dislike, as some have termed it, to use a straitjacket in the education of their children. Many parents have a settled dislike for the holy principles of the Word of God because these principles place too much responsibility on them. But the aftersight which all parents are obliged to have shows that God's ways are the best, and the only path of safety and happiness is found in obedience to His will. Restraint of children is no easy task. In the present state of things in society, it is no easy task for parents to restrain their children and instruct them according to the Bible rule of right. When they would train their children in harmony with the precepts of the Word of God, and like Abraham of old, command their households after them, the children think their parents over-careful and unnecessarily exacting. False ideas regarding restraint. If you want the blessing of God, parents, do as did Abraham, repress the evil and encourage the good. Some commanding may be necessary in the place of consulting the inclination and pleasure of the children. To allow a child to follow his natural impulses is to allow him to deteriorate and to become proficient in evil. Wise parents will not say to their children, follow your own choice, go where you will and do what you will, but listen to the instruction of the Lord. Wise rules and regulations must be made and enforced, that the beauty of the home life may not be spoiled. Why Achan's family perished. Have you considered why it was that all who were connected with Achan were also subjects of the punishment of God? It was because they had not been trained and educated according to the directions given them in the great standard of the law of God. Achan's parents had educated their son in such a way that he felt free to disobey the word of the Lord. The principles inculcated in his life led him to deal with his children in such a way that they also were corrupted. Mind acts and reacts upon mind, and the punishment, which included the relations of Achan with himself, reveals the fact that all were involved in the transgression. Blind parental affection, the greatest obstacle in training. The sin of parental neglect is almost universal. Blind affection for those who are connected with us by the ties of nature too often exists. This affection is carried to great lengths. It is not balanced by the wisdom or the fear of God. Blind parental affection is the greatest obstacle in the way of the proper training of children. It prevents the discipline and training which are required by the Lord. At times, because of this affection, parents seem to be bereft of their reason. It is like the tender mercies of the wicked, cruelly disguised in the garb of so-called love. It is the dangerous undercurrent which carries children to ruin. Parents are in constant danger of indulging natural affections at the expense of obedience to God's law. Many parents, to please their children, allow what God forbids. Parental responsibility for what children might have been. If, as teachers in the home, the father and mother allow children to take the lines of control into their own hands and to become wayward, they are held responsible for what their children might otherwise have been. Those who follow their own inclination in blind affection for their children, indulging them in the gratification of their selfish desires, and do not bring to bear the authority of God to rebuke sin and correct evil, make it manifest that they are honoring their wicked children more than they honor God. They are more anxious to shield their reputation than to glorify God, more desirous to please their children than to please the Lord. Those who have too little courage to reprove wrong, or who through indolence or lack of interest make no earnest effort to purify the family or the church of God, are held accountable for the evil that may result from their neglect of duty. We are just as responsible for evils that we might have checked in others by exercise of parental or pastoral authority, as if the acts had been our own. No place for partiality. It is very natural for parents to be partial to their own children, especially if these parents feel that they themselves possess superior ability. They will regard their children as superior to other children. Hence, much that would be severely censured in others is passed over in their own children as smart and witty. While this partiality is natural, it is unjust and unchristian. A great wrong is done our children when we permit their faults to go uncorrected. Make no compromise with evil. It should be made plain that the government of God knows no compromise with evil. Neither in the home nor in the school should disobedience be tolerated. No parent or teacher